This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
President Xi Jinping addresses ceremony marking CPC Centenary, says China will stay true to the one country, two systems principle to safeguard security. China's ruling CPC party played a big role in Africa's liberation struggle. And at least 10 killed in overnight attack in eastern DR Congo city of Beni. Hello everyone, welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details of those stories in just a moment, but first, here's Rama Yang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. The world's most powerful oil producers are meeting today to decide the next phase of their production policy. And Nigeria's long-awaited bill to overhaul its oil and gas sector has finally been presented to Parliament. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we start in China, where the country has held a grand ceremony to mark the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China. Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the party's Central Committee, delivered a keynote speech. He reviewed the party's history and achievements and called on young Chinese to carry on the legacy. CGTN's Kui Huiyao has more.
A dignified march across Tiananmen Square at the heart of Beijing. The honor guards marched on the red carpet and raised the Chinese flag. Around 70,000 spectators watched the ceremony on Tiananmen Square, including party members and the general public. In his speech, President Xi Jinping, also the General Secretary of the party, highlighted the CPC's journey over the past century. One of the greatest achievements, he said, was to build a moderately prosperous society.
On this special occasion, it's my honor to declare on behalf of the party and the people that through the continued efforts of the whole party and the entire nation, we have realized the first centenary goal of building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. This means that we have brought about a historic resolution to the problem of absolute poverty in China, and we're now marching with confident strides towards the second centenary goal of building China into a great modern socialist country in all respects. This is the great and glorious accomplishment for the Chinese nation, for the Chinese people, and for the Communist Party of China.
A 3,000-person choir gave a performance. They included students of different ages, from elementary school pupils to college students.
In the new era, our young people should make it their mission to contribute to national rejuvenation and aspire to become more proud, confident, and assured in their identity as Chinese people, so that they can live up to the promise of their youth and the expectations of our times, our party, and our people.
Together, they sang several songs that are very familiar to the Chinese, many of which were composed in wartime. And a performance in the sky as well. Military helicopters and fighter jets formed the numbers 171 to signify centenary and the date July 1st.
We must take resolute action to utterly defeat any attempt towards Taiwan independence and work together to create a bright future for national rejuvenation. No one should underestimate the resolve, the will, and the ability of the Chinese people to defend their national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
President Xi called on party members to continue working together to realize the Chinese dream. That is to build China into a strong, prosperous, and harmonious nation. The CPC went from a small group of around 50 members to now one of the world's largest political parties, with more than 95 million members. Party officials say its ability to weather many storms shows the party's strength and vitality.
清除一切侵蚀党的健康机体的病毒。
We must tighten the party's organizational system, work hard to train high-caliber officials who have both moral integrity and professional competence, remain committed to improving party conduct, upholding integrity in combating corruption, and root out any elements that would harm the party's advanced nature and purity and any viruses that would erode its health.
始终成为坚强领导核心。
Over the past century, China has been transformed from a poor and backward country to the world's second largest economy. As the CPC celebrates this important milestone today, a new chapter has also begun. The party says it plans to draw experience and strength from history as it forges ahead to further rejuvenate the nation and, more importantly, to build a better life for the Chinese people.
伟大、光荣、正确的中国共产党万岁！伟大、光荣、英雄的中国人民万岁！
Cao Huiyao, CGTN, reporting from Tiananmen Square in Beijing.
The Communist Party of China played a pivotal role in the liberation struggles of a number of African states. The party has also continued to partner with the continent, especially through infrastructural projects. The projects are aimed at realizing economic development and poverty eradication. Let's now hear more from Chris Mutsavangwa, a senior member of Zimbabwe's ruling party ZANU-PF. He was also the country's ambassador to China for 4 years.
Since the inception of modern China in 1949, Beijing has always championed the cause of Africa in the World Forum. Because of this, China found itself supporting the independence movement of Africa. And when Southern Africa became a battleground between racism, apartheid, and colonial minority rule, China found itself firmly on the side of the African majority people of Southern Africa. It is a very, very, very vibrant relationship. It owes its origins to the work of Chairman Chitepo when he was in Tanzania. He was the founder of the military wing of the African Liberation Movement of Zimbabwe called ZANU at that particular time. Using the conduit, using the channels of President Nyerere of Tanzania, he built a very, very close working relationship with China at that particular time. And that was also a time when China was championing the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, which advocated for African majority in respect of territorial integrity of other countries. And Premier Chu En-lai at that time, he was a very good friend of Africa. And through President Nyerere, ZANU-PF forged a close working relationship with China. The Chinese Communist Party has given Africa the confidence that development is not a Western monopoly. Development is a right of everybody in the world. And the way the Communist Party of China has been running its programs with a long-term view of its development trajectory and reaching out to everybody in the world. You know, China is now the major trading partner of almost every country on earth. This is the way Africa has to go. We need to rely on our own resources.
The Chinese youth have been a crucial source of strength for the CPC party since its inception. According to a Xinhua news agency, the average age of the 13 delegates of the first CPC National Congress in 1921 was only 28. Those young founding members were a fresh force representing the Chinese people in the search for the future of the nation, which was at that time beset by warlords and the plundering of Western powers. According to the organization's department of the CPC Central Committee, in 2019, the CPC recruited over 2.34 million new members. 80.3% of them were aged 35 or younger. Well, I'm now joined by Ephraim Nekongo. He's the secretary of the SWAPO Party Youth League in Windhoek, Namibia. Ephraim, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. Now, what are some of the lessons African political leaders can draw from the CPC in terms of nurturing future political leaders?
Good evening, or rather good morning that side. One thing that we as the SWAPO Party Youth League and the party at large can draw from the Chinese Communist Party of China is that they have a program to nurture the young leaders. And I think that's something that we can really praise the Communist Party of China, especially that you groom leaders. And we as a party is something that we have really taken very seriously. And that's why you can see now in the party leadership, and also we have ever produced the youngest member of parliament. And this is just a lesson that we have learned from our through our relationship with the Communist Party of China.
So how can youthful political leaders, though, help achieve CPC's people-centered development, objective and foundations of youth-friendly political parties in Africa?
Well, the CPC have many programs that they have interacted with many political parties in Africa. SWAPO Party Youth League is one of it. And we go through training that is organized by the CPC, and that has helped us, many African countries, and those that have relationship with the Communist Party of China, to learn more on how do we face the challenges that our countries are facing, and also to instill that responsibility of taking care of young people of any given country, because the future of any given country belongs to the young people. Therefore, those programs has really assisted the African countries, to be specific Namibia, to achieve many things that we can able to pass on to the young people.
Ephraim Nekongo joining us there from Windhoek, Namibia. Thank you. Well, thousands of kilometers separate China and Kenya, but for one young member of the Communist Party of China, the East African country is starting to feel like home. Archie Young has lived in Kenya since September 2020, and he's found inspiration and friendships through building ties and making a difference in Kenya.
Tafadhali utaweka malipo pale, alafu tukufungulie hizo stations za StarTimes. Kama ni kupitia kupigia simu.
Kenya for me is a very good place to work and even live. Just divided now. What I do is no matter just to earn money for myself, it's just to let more people in Africa can enjoy the digital life. Morning, Peter.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Yeah, show me that map.
Oh, yeah, today one of countries for a day.
Today we'll check the dealers in Narokatang. Okay. Yes. My name is Archie. This is my Chinese name called Yang Dongqi. And now I'm working in StarTimes Kenya, and my job is the sales manager.
In September 2020, Archie came to Kenya right after his graduation. Archie conducts field visits for sales and marketing.
So today is a very nice day, and we just come from Nairobi to Narok. And today our plan is just to check one village that have our village project. Hi, Fit.
Hi, you too.
This is Archie from StarTimes. And today I just check your equipment. So how about your dish? Now it's still working?
Yeah, it's still working.
Ah, let me see what you are watching.
Faith Kinyayo and her family are one of the beneficiaries of the 10,000 Villages initiative. Spearheaded by Chinese President Xi Jinping in 2015,
中非人文合作计划 中方将为非洲援建5所文化中心，为非洲1万个村落实施收看卫星电视项目。
The initiative seeks to expand access to digital TV. 20 households were connected in every village, as well as 3 projectors for public spaces. 20 households were connected in every village, as well as 3 projectors for public spaces.
What Africa now have is actually what we have maybe 20 years ago. So we know what Africa wants. Just about the 10,000 village project, we know they need the digital TV. The good content, they need to get news outside their country, their village.
As a young CPC member, Archie is guided by the values and the principles of the party as he seeks to make a difference in Kenya.
When I was young, I have a very good environment to grow up. But compared with here, the young people, especially in the rural area, they have their dreams, but they don't know how to achieve this. They don't have the ways to be successful.
Through moments like these, Archie has witnessed the impact Star Times is having on rural communities, and it fills him with pride.
Sometimes it's very difficult to help somebody, but our Star Times using the village project provided the free digital TV to extend their horizon.
A business trip to Narok proved life-changing for Archie. It was in the middle of the Europa football tournament, and even though Star Times had installed the infrastructure for digital TV, the Children's Centre could not afford the subscription. Seeing the disappointment on the children's faces, Archie offered to pay the subscription himself.
I just see the smiles from that boys. They were very happy because you see, the football is everything for them.
For Faith, Star Times has helped broaden her horizons and fuel her dreams.
Since I was young, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I have also watched programs of lawyers. They have motivated me and made me feel that I can also be a lawyer and be like them. The way they act, I also want to fight for people's rights.
The first one, convergent team, sales and payment.
Kenya is a long way from home for Archie, but this new job has come with new friends.
So sometimes I feel very lonely and helpless, but when I feel this kind of emotion, I can talk with my colleague, I can talk with my sales, with my assistants, with my regional manager. They are so friendly to me and show enough respect to me. Now, I just feel I already fallen in love with Africa. Not just because the environment, also the people here.
Well, many African journalists have had the opportunity to visit China and acquaint themselves with its policies that have propelled the country to where it is today. These are the voices of some African journalists on China-Africa cooperation and China's poverty alleviation strategy.
The ties and interactions between Zimbabwe and China are significant. They're very strong, but I think also very critical for a country like Zimbabwe, which sees China as a critical and strategic partner for its development. This relationship is historical, dating back to the days of the liberation and during Zimbabwe's years of international isolation, where China stood by it and supported it on international forums such as the United Nations. And even now, when you speak to the generality of Zimbabweans, whether they are authorities, cabinet ministers, business people, and ordinary Zimbabweans. You get a sense of mutual respect for China, where they recognize the role that China has played in supporting the country.
Egypt was the first Arab and African country to recognize the People's Republic of China in 1956. Since then, relations were warm between the two countries that share long histories and deep-rooted civilizations. But since 2014, ties took a totally new dimension. The presidents of China and Egypt met 8 times, including a visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping to Egypt in January 2016. And relations have been elevated to a strategic partnership. China supported Egypt politically and economically through a tough transition period after 2013. Since then, bilateral trade increased tenfold, while Chinese investments have exceeded $7 billion, up from only $500 million. China has also been instrumental in Egypt's process of rebuilding its infrastructure, with financing and investments alone in this sector have exceeded $20 billion.
Well, I think one of the key spaces in which we can learn from China is certainly in the alleviation of poverty. That remains maybe one of the key things that is holding Africa back. And how China was able to succeed in eradicating poverty, in terms of what I said earlier, like in terms of the fact that they had a goal and they remained committed to it, this is a key thing that I think African nations can borrow from China's experience. That political will to truly see your people prosper is something that I think the CPC and China have shown is possible, and I don't see why we can't emulate that and achieve the same for our own people.
This is where there should be synergies between African countries and China, borrowing, learning, policies, implementation processes, which sectors that can drive these processes, like agriculture is a key sector in Africa, employs many, contributes to the highest contributor to many African GDPs, agriculture. So probably it's one area that Africa can focus on in its cooperation and in its cooperation with China.
You're watching Africa Live. It's still ahead on the program. Burkina Faso's president takes on defense role amid security crisis. And DR Congo cancels Independence Day celebrations due to COVID-19 pandemic.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
On to Burkina Faso now, where President Roch Marc Christian Kabore has taken over as Minister of Defense from Sheriff Sai. This follows demands from the opposition for the resignation of the Prime Minister and Minister of Defense over insecurity in the country. The opposition scheduled 2-day protests on July the 3rd and 4th, in which they were to pay tribute to victims of terrorism. Kabore, however, asked for a postponement of the protests. Burkina Faso has been experiencing civilian attacks by Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State-affiliated groups. In June, more than 130 people were killed in a suspected jihadist attack, considered the deadliest since 2015. Well, let's cross over to Rinaldo Dopagne. He's the Deputy Program Director, Africa, and Project Director, West Africa at the International Crisis Group. Rinaldo, thank you for joining us on the program. So what are your thoughts on Burkina Faso's president's move of taking over the role of Defense Minister?
Well, you already said many things about that. I mean, you need to get back to this dramatic slaughter that happened in one city of the northern Burkina on the 5th of June. And the consequences of this was street protest and anger among the population. And so you mentioned that we will have certainly a big demonstration in the capital Ouagadougou on Saturday and Sunday, but already some cities like Titao or Kaya, where it's very unusual to see a demonstration and people in the streets, those cities ask for a better security. And the president had to act very quickly to try to limit those protests. And the only move he could do was to perhaps answer to one of the claims of the opposition. And you mentioned the opposition wanted the resignation of the Ministry of Defense. It's done. The resignation of the Ministry of Interior Security. It's done. It's more harder for him to ask the Prime Minister, who is doing quite a good job, to resign. But at least two key ministers of the security apparatus resigned, and now he's on the first line, which is for him a big risk, because if there is no improvement in the coming months, then he will be the one to be blamed.
Right, so it is a big risk, but how effective actually do you think it would be?
I think the opposition has a valid argument when they are saying that changing individuals won't fully address structural problems that are undermining the security apparatus of this country. And we saw in recent months how still today 30% of the Burkinabe territory is not covered by any security forces at all. How some people who are now proxies of the army, the so-called volunteers for the defense of the motherland, who were supposed to be paid, are not paid. All those problems need perhaps more than a few individuals removed to be changed.
All right, Rinaldo Dupan joining us there via Zoom. Thank you. At least 10 people have been killed in an overnight attack in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Local authorities say armed attackers raided Beu district and set several houses on fire. The attack comes after the eastern city of Beni was hit by 3 weekend bomb blasts. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Residents of Beu district say the attackers raided their territory in the middle of the night and burnt several houses. They are reported to have killed people using machetes and guns as they fled the area. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, but authorities have blamed it on the Allied Democratic Forces rebels, an Islamist group that's originally from Uganda. Security officials accuse them of killing more than 1,000 civilians in eastern DRC since 2014. The latest attack comes days after 3 bomb blasts hit Beni territory. Hundreds of residents took to the streets of Beni on Thursday to protest against what they called the government's failure to protect them. The DRC government declared martial law in Ituri and North Kivu province in May in a bid to stop the violence in the region, but the killing of civilians has continued. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Meanwhile, the DRC cancelled celebrations to mark the 61st independence anniversary due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Authorities have recorded a significant increase in cases over the past 3 weeks. The vast Central African nation gained independence from Belgium in 1960, but more than 2 decades of conflict and political instability have kept millions of its citizens in poverty. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa joins us again with more from Kinshasa.
A quiet Independence Day in Kinshasa. The government cancelled public festivities to mark the country's 61st independence anniversary due to a spike in COVID-19 cases. The DRC is experiencing a 3rd wave of infections, with the Delta variant spreading fast in the capital, Kinshasa. But that hasn't stopped some Congolese from going out to public places.
D'abord, l'indépendance, c'est quelque chose de joie.
Our independence is something to be joyful about. We should celebrate it. There is a biblical saying that it is better to eat a dry crust of bread with peace and quiet than to be in a house full of feasting with strife.
Many Congolese were already struggling to get by before the pandemic. Their condition has only been made worse. The government of President Felix Tshisekedi has promised to create jobs and improve the welfare of Congolese citizens. But ongoing conflicts in eastern DRC have made it difficult for those promises to be fulfilled.
We still have a long way to go. I do agree that this new regime has come up with new ideas, but these are still ideas. We want to see them implemented, particularly in those domains that we mentioned, and hopefully we may, end up having a transformed country maybe 10 years down the road.
The government believes it must end the fighting in the mineral-rich provinces in the country's east to have that transformation.
The colonial rule in the DRC was brutal. Millions of Congolese were forced to work in farms, and many of them were killed on orders of the Belgian King Leopold II. Last year, the current Belgian king expressed regrets over his nation's colonial past. But life is still difficult for many Congolese 61 years after the country gained independence. Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
It's been common practice for South Africans to move to big cities in search of better work opportunities. But the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated a new trend, migrating to coastal areas. Semigration, which is moving to another place in the same country, was growing before the pandemic but has taken off since South Africa went into lockdown and overseas travel has been limited. Here's CGTN's Julie Shire.
The beauty of the Western Cape has always been a draw card for international tourists. In the absence of travelers during COVID-19, South Africans with the option to work from anywhere are now moving to quieter, more relaxed cities like Cape Town.
It definitely is the preferred city. There are many reasons why it's the preferred city. Of course, we've got beautiful mountain ranges, so many outdoor activities, shark cage diving, windsurfing, surfing, mountain climbing. So I think there's good reason why people want to move from upcountry Johannesburg down to the coast in Cape Town.
Semigration is by no means a new trend, but it's been on the increase since the COVID-19 pandemic, which has given rise to a new era of remote working.
South Africa, unfortunately, has been hit hardest in terms of travel restrictions. So we are pretty much forced to stay within the country, spend our money in the country, which is not a bad thing, and buy our property in the country as opposed to looking at alternate destinations.
Most intercity migrants are from Gauteng, the country's economic nerve center. It's also the most populous province with a high standard of living and alarming levels of crime.
They would look for areas within that country which obviously would provide them with the safety and security that they require, and also standard of living which they will associate with. The most important thing for any person right now is to have two things, I think, basically. Reliable electricity, number one, and number two, access to Wi-Fi and fiber.
Most movement still happens between three big cities, Durban, Cape Town and Johannesburg, but smaller towns are also benefiting.
Towns such as Stilbaai in the Western Cape, it has brought in a lot of skilled migrants, doctors, vets, engineers. So the connection of so many entrepreneurs has also ensured that the town also develops and also become an attractive center.
Packing up your life for better job opportunities in big cities has been a norm in the past. The COVID-19 lockdown has somewhat changed this as South Africans continue to work from home to stay safe from the virus. As long as interest rates remain historically low and property prices are attractive, this new migration trend is expected to continue. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Well, let's now go to Ramanyang for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. The world's largest oil producers are meeting today to decide the next phase of their production policy. And Nigeria's long-awaited bill to overhaul its oil sector has finally been presented to Parliament.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different. It's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Welcome back to the program. Now, a group of some of the world's most powerful oil producers are meeting today to decide the next phase of their production policy. This particular group is made up of OPEC, that's the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and some non-members of that group, but are still large producers like Russia. Collectively, they're moving towards adding some 2 million barrels per day of production to the market between August and December this year. Monthly increases effectively would amount to less than 500,000 barrels of crude each month. Now, the Middle East-dominated producer group agreed to implement massive crude production cuts in 2020 when the coronavirus pandemic coincided with a massive and historic fuel demand shock. Analysts now expect oil demand to gather pace in the second half of the year as more people are getting vaccinated against COVID-19 and travel restrictions, at least in some markets, are being eased. Brent crude was up by about $1.40 a barrel to $76 a barrel by 10:51 GMT. WTI crude, the benchmark in the United States, also did rise by $1.50 to just under $75 a barrel. Still on oil issues, the long-awaited bill to overhaul nearly every aspect of Nigeria's oil and gas production has been presented in both chambers of parliament. Now, the chambers are expected to start voting on the bill on a clause-by-clause basis on Thursday. Legislators have been thrashing out the details of the bill ever since President Muhammadu Buhari presented an initial version of it last September. First presented to the National Assembly back in 2008, the Petroleum Industry Bill aims to overhaul how energy projects in Africa's largest oil producer are operated and funded. Wrangling between politicians, objections from oil companies have all scuppered previous versions of this bill. Away from the commodities market, let's head over to South Africa. Private sector loans over there do remain in contraction territory in the month of May, as corporates and households reduced credit on an account of COVID-19 induced activity. Now, the South African Reserve Bank adds that credit did decline by around 0.4% year on year in the month of May, following a steep decline of nearly 1.8% in the month of April. The decline was better than market expectations, though. The forecast was for a decline of nearly 1%. The easing is also attributed to corporate credit, which contracted 5% year on year in the month of May, following a 6.7% decline in the month of April. South African businesses have remained pretty reluctant to take on more credit as uncertainties over the economic outlook remain, in part due to rising COVID-19 cases and the pandemic restrictions that inevitably follow. Tobacco farmers in Zimbabwe have so far brought in around $400 million in revenue in 2 months after the tobacco marketing season started. This represents a 40% increase in the volume of tobacco that's been sold over the same period last year. As Farai Mukutua now reports, more than 170,000 kilos of the leaf have been delivered to Zimbabwean auction floors, setting the country on course to achieve some significant output.
Thanks to a good rainy season, the quality of the crop this year is better and has fetched an average price 13% firmer than last year. By the end of this selling season, farmers are expected to have delivered 9% more tobacco than they did during the previous one.
From the crop this year, farmers will actually earn probably plus or minus 540 million kilograms, and we might earn 1.5 times more from the export process.
Accounting for 21% of export earnings, the golden leaf, despite the health concerns, remains crucial for Zimbabwe's economy. Global demand for leaf tobacco is shrinking by about 2% per annum due to a growing anti-smoking lobby, as well as the emergence of alternative products such as e-cigarettes. In view of this, industry stakeholders have devised a strategy that will ensure the long-term sustainability of the sector, as well as the survival of farmers. It involves mobilizing more domestic resources to finance the crop and improve leaf quality.
Smokers smoke for nicotine, and that comes from the flavor tobacco that we grow. So we will always remain relevant if we continuously improve our flavor type tobacco.
And encouraging farmers to leverage their current earnings to venture into emerging money spinners.
We are working with farmers in order so that they can diversify their economic activities at the farm. We want them to diversify with tobacco as an anchor crop. The revenue from tobacco can be used to grow other crops like cannabis for medicinal use, like industrial hemp, or any other food crops or energy crops.
The government has said it plans to ramp up production and increase local value addition and processing to create a $5 billion tobacco industry by 2025. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
On to East Africa, Uganda to be specific, where the government has started registering the expanded 16 identified vulnerable groups that are eligible to get $30 in COVID-19 cash grants. Disbursement is expected to start within the next fortnight or so. The government aims to reach some 500,000 households with this relief grant. As CGTN's Isabel Nakiria now reports from Kampala.
Hassan Kasiria's van has been packed up for nearly 2 weeks since Uganda went into COVID-19 lockdown. He is a taxi driver in Kampala, but since public transport was suspended, he's not earning a living.
We taxi drivers are not doing well at all. From the owners of the taxi to us, who are employed to drive. The ordinary person is bad off. I call upon the president to remember us, the local people.
Hassan now spends time playing board games with his friends just to pass time. He is among the vulnerable groups who will receive a $30 cash transfer to help him and his family during lockdown. Families are expected to use the money for purchasing food and other household items. But Hassan says it's too little to meet his family's needs.
I beg the president to open up the country so that we can work and take care of our families, because the government will not be able to reach everyone with that money. When will it even reach us?
The government aims to reach about 500,000 households with this relief cash. The money will be transferred to mobile phone accounts. The cash transfers are yet to begin flowing into people's accounts, even when people have been home for close to 2 weeks. Last year, vulnerable groups were given food, but there were concerns that it wasn't enough and some people missed out in the handouts. A mobile van will also move to communities with cash to hand out to people without mobile phone accounts.
This 42 days vulnerable group is strictly those whom the lockdown measures interrupted their daily work, and their daily work is only when they work that they can earn something to eat.
The Uganda Bureau of Statistics will send teams to identify people eligible for this money. Categories listed include taxi drivers, hairdressers, teachers, musicians, pubs and nightclub workers, among many more. The government imposed a 42-day lockdown on 18th June to try and bring down infection rates, which had surged to over 1,000 per day. Uganda is going through a new wave of coronavirus that scientists say is more deadly. The Minister of Health says the numbers are now going down, but some urgent restrictions on movement are preventing many people from accessing testing centers. And many who depend on daily earnings like Hassan say the government should allow them to work under strict rules so they can sustain their livelihoods. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
To quick stories outside of the continent, starting in the EU. The 1st of July marks the first day for an EU-wide COVID-19 certificate to come into effect, just in time essentially for the summer vacation in the region. Now, the document is available both in digital form and in hard copy. It basically shows the bearer's information on COVID-19 vaccination, your infection history, or lack thereof, and test results as well. It's meant to facilitate travel and remove the need for quarantines. As of Wednesday, 21 EU countries have already started to accept this certificate. That includes France, Spain, Italy, Greece and Croatia. But a surge of the Delta variant of the virus was detected in India, now rampant in the former EU member of the UK, may curtail plans for the further adoption of this travel pass, at least in that particular market. Calculations by AFP show that roughly 30% of people in the EU are considered to be fully vaccinated. And finally, the Chinese manufacturing sector expanded at a much softer pace in the month of June, with firms recording slower increases in both output and new orders. The Caixin Manufacturing Pmi edged down from 52 points in May to 51.3, just above expansion territory in the month of June, signaling a further modest improvement in the health of the sector. Now, the figure is consistent, though, with official data out of the National Bureau of Statistics early in the week on Wednesday, which also saw manufacturing activity edging lower by at least a tenth of a percentage point. Companies indicated that the recent uptick in COVID cases and supply chain difficulties all weighed in on output, while the pandemic has dampened demand both at home and abroad. I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. In Global Business, we'll be heading back to Uganda. We'll be exploring the country's new data tax, which took effect today. While presenting the budget for this fiscal year, the country's planning minister said the government would rationalize the excise duty regime on telecommunication services by scrapping the much criticized over-the-top tax and replace that with a duty rate of 12% on data. But what effect will this likely have? How much money will it raise? And will this stand in the way of further internet access in Uganda? We'll have some answers for you at the top of the hour. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. The World Health Organization warns that Euro 2020 tournament is driving the rise in COVID-19 infections.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
The World Health Organization says that crowds at Euro 2020 football